The story begins in the darkest corners of a past the world still fears to remember. A time when Colombia's streets were soaked in paranoia, and whispers could mean life or death. Tonight, we open the doors to a case so twisted, so buried beneath layers of fear, that even the bravest investigators hesitated to speak of it. A name traveling through shadows like a ghost, Dandeny Muñoz Mosquera, better known as La Quica, the man prosecutors claimed to be the most dangerous assassin Pablo Escobar ever commanded. But behind every legend is a truth, and behind every truth is a mystery waiting to be unmasked. As you watch this unfolding storm of secrets, you'll find yourself asking, was he truly the coldest killer of the Medellín Cartel, or a man trapped between the lies of two nations? And as the first cracks of his story appear, imagine the families who still search for answers, wondering why justice arrived the way it did, and whether it even arrived at all. Before we go deeper, take a moment to settle in, because what you're about to see is not just crime history, it's a silent scream frozen in time. If you're ready to move into the shadows with me, hit subscribe, because from here onward, the truth grows darker with every step. New York City, 1991. A young man with a quiet face and unreadable eyes steps off a plane, blending perfectly with the rush of travelers around him. No alarms. No suspicion. No sign that he might be carrying the weight of international terror on his shoulders. Within hours, U.S. immigration officers detect inconsistencies, paperwork too clean, answers too rehearsed, and a silence too calculated. The man they pull into custody claims he is just another traveler. But the moment observers look into his still, emotionless eyes, they sense a deeper story, one wrapped in blood, bombs, and cartel orders whispered from violent power. As he sits alone in the interview room, the air thickens. Every question asked seems to bounce off him like bullets against armor. He reveals nothing, no fear, no worry, no guilt. It is this silence that terrifies investigators the most. And as we leave this moment suspended, imagine standing in that room, facing a man who may have ended hundreds of lives, or may be carrying the blame for someone else entirely. If this is pulling you in, remember to subscribe, because what comes next will shake the ground beneath this entire case. To understand the monster authorities believed they captured, we step back into the blazing heart of 1980s Medellín. A city where the Medellín Cartel ruled every breath, and where Pablo Escobar's enemies vanished like smoke in the wind. Legends whispered that La Quica had turned murder into a silent art, an assassin capable of slipping through borders, disguises, and entire armies. Justice departments claimed he bombed police stations, gunned down officers, and helped orchestrate chaos that spread like wildfire. But behind the official story, local rumors painted something far more unsettling, not one assassin, but a rotating mask worn by multiple men, all blamed on a single name. Historians began asking the questions no one dared voice in public. How can one man be in 10 places at once? How do identities disappear so effortlessly? And if prosecutors were wrong, then who was truly responsible for the horrors that followed? As this part of the past closes its grip on you, breathe for a moment. Because soon, the line between truth and legend will blur so violently that you won't know which side to stand on. If you're ready for the next revelation, tap that subscribe button, because the darkest chapter begins now. Avianca Flight 203, one of the most chilling tragedies in modern Colombian history. On November 27, 1989, innocent passengers stepped aboard, unaware that their final journey had already been written. Within minutes of takeoff, the sky shook with a violent explosion. Debris rained across hillsides. Families ran, screaming, toward smoke rising like a black scar against the blue morning sky. 95 passengers, all gone in seconds. And before the flames were even extinguished, whispers began. Escobar wanted a rival candidate dead. The device was planted. But who carried out the order? U.S. prosecutors would later say it was La Quica, the same quiet man who now sat in American custody. But when investigators dug into Colombian prison records, they discovered something bizarre. according to multiple sources, Quica was serving time in a Colombian jail on the exact day Flight 203 exploded. How could a man be two places at once? How could a prisoner carry out one of the deadliest attacks in the nation's history? If this contradiction makes your pulse jump, remember to subscribe. The truth is about to twist even deeper. Back in the US, the interrogation intensified. Agents pressed him with photos, timelines, evidence maps, yet the man in chains showed nothing but steady, silent defiance. He denied everything. He claimed mistaken identity. He claimed he wasn't Quica at all. And investigators were caught in a storm, on one side, US intelligence insisting they finally had Escobar's deadliest operative, on the other, Colombian reporters insisting they had the wrong man entirely. It wasn't just a conflict of stories, it was a collision between two nations' versions of the truth. In these long nights, some agents admitted privately that the evidence felt thin, stretched like a thread pulled to its breaking point. But the pressure was massive. The drug war demanded victories. Someone had to answer for Flight 203. Someone had to be blamed. Someone had to be punished. And whether this silent man was guilty or not, he was becoming the face of terror for millions. If you feel the weight of that silence, hit subscribe, because what comes next is the trial that shook the world. The courtroom transformed into a battlefield, federal prosecutors confident, determined, and ready to paint the accused as a walking engine of destruction. They used every witness, every file, every whisper ever recorded about a man named Quica. They showed the jury photos of Flight 203 wreckage, read emotional testimonies of grieving families, and replayed terror that had scarred an entire nation. But defense attorneys rose with equal fire, insisting that prosecutors were chasing a ghost, not a man. They argued he wasn't even in the same hemisphere during many of the crimes tied to his name. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The jury sat between two storms, one demanding justice, the other warning of a global mistake. And as closing arguments echoed through the room, a chilling silence settled over everyone watching. A silence that asked, are we about to punish the right man, or bury the truth forever? If you feel that question clawing at your thoughts, make sure to subscribe, because the verdict is moments away. When the verdict dropped, the world froze. Guilty. 10 life sentences. No chance of parole. The courtroom erupted, some in relief, some in shock. The man at the center of it all showed no reaction, as if he had already accepted that his truth didn't matter. Reporters rushed out of the courthouse, broadcasting the message that one of Escobar's most lethal assassins was finally caged for life. But behind the cameras, behind the crowds, a smaller voice whispered from the shadows, what if they got the wrong man? Families of Flight 203 victims cried, held photos, whispered prayers. Yet even as justice seemed served, doubts continued to fester. Investigators abroad insisted the puzzle didn't fit. Evidence was missing. Records contradicted each other. The truth seemed more fractured than ever. If this emotional crossroads grips your heart, consider subscribing, because the story of a guilty verdict is only the beginning of a deeper mystery. Years passed, but the questions never faded. Journalists dug deeper and unearthed conflicting testimonies, missing Colombian prison logs, and witnesses who swore Quica was a name multiple hitmen used interchangeably. They uncovered hints that the real bomber might have died long ago, or might still be alive somewhere, hidden by the same shadows that birthed the Medellín Cartel. Each discovery was like pulling a thread on a tapestry, revealing more chaos, not clarity. And while the world moved on, one man sat inside a U.S. maximum security prison, serving a lifetime for a crime he claimed he never touched. The deeper you look, the more the ground crumbles beneath the official version. If you're starting to question everything you thought you knew, subscribe, because what you're about to hear next could rewrite the entire narrative. Inside his cell, Dandeny Muñoz Mosquera aged in stillness. His letters, interviews, and statements repeated the same line, I am not who they say I am. He insisted he was not Escobar's assassin. Not the bomber. not the legend the world created. Some saw this as manipulation. Others saw it as the last remaining truth of a man swallowed by an identity crafted for him. But no matter the interpretation, one reality remained hauntingly clear: if he was innocent, the real perpetrator of Flight 203 was never caught. Families continued to mourn, torn between closure and doubt. And the man inside the cell continued to fade into silence. If this image shakes you, the idea of a life sealed behind bars, possibly on the wrong name, subscribe. Because the final chapter ties everything together in a way you won't forget. We end this journey in the echoing quiet of a prison hallway. Decades have passed. The world that once trembled under Escobar is gone. Yet one man remains in a cell, locked away under 10 life sentences for crimes that might not even belong to him. His identity questioned. His past rewritten. His truth buried under politics, pressure, and the desperate need for justice after an unthinkable tragedy. In this final breath of the story, ask yourself, did the system capture a monster, or create one? As you leave this case behind, imagine the families of Flight 203, still grieving, still wondering, still hoping the real truth is someday revealed. And imagine the chilling possibility that some secrets are so deep, so tangled, that they may never reach the light. If this story moved you, if it made you question justice, truth, or the shadows behind the headlines, subscribe to the channel. More unseen crimes await, and together, we'll bring truth out of the dark.